It's time for the NordCast here on WOBL, and here's your host, Nord Center CEO Don Schiffbauer.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Don Schiffbauer, and I'm the CEO, and we are here again with you for another very informational episode of our NordCast podcast. And today we're going to be kind of getting into the holiday spirit, but to kind of talk about your holiday spirit and some of the issues that you, a family, or friend may be faced with. Before we get into that, I just want to remind everybody that, one, we appreciate you being with us today or watching on a podcast at a later time and date. But the Nord Center, we're a community behavioral health agency. We've been serving Lorain County for over 75 years. We've got 5 main service lines. We provide behavioral health services for child and adolescents, adults. We are the largest provider of residential services for people with severe and persistent mental illness. We also are the county seat for the sexual assault services, which includes services for sexual assault victims, rape victims, both child and adolescent and adults. And what I'm going to talk a little bit about before we talk to our guest is crisis services. You may or may not know that 988 is out there. 988 is a federal initiative. It is kind of like the new 911, but for behavioral health. The 988 number replaces the suicide crisis hotline, and we are one of 19 call centers within the state that field 988 calls in our area. And 988 is a number that you can call 24/7 and be connected with a trained mental health professional so that we can help you or your family member or friend get connected with the services that they need in a rapid fashion. We also have mobile crisis services that respond out into the community, and we have another really cool service, which is the Warm Line. And our Warm Line is a peer support, somebody with lived experience with mental health issues, where people can call between the hours of 10 a.m. No, 1 p.m. I'm looking at my colleague Amber over here. 1 p.m. and 10 p.m. During those hours to be able to be connected with a peer support specialist and talk through some of the issues that they might be feeling at that time. In today's NordCast, we are going to be talking about stress around the holidays, which is something I think all of us feel, whether it is stress related to being able to get your house or living space ready for the holidays, how you're going to afford things, or maybe it's the stress of having to interact with friends and loved ones or other types of things that may cause some trepidation. And we're going to talk to Amber Smith, our Director of Crisis Services, after the break. Some of the things we're going to be covering are what aspects of the holidays make people feel better, and what aspects of the holidays make people feel worse. And importantly, about how you can check in with yourself and how you can check in with others. But if you realize that there's some help needed by you, your family member, or your friend, we're going to tell you where and how to access that. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk with Amber Smith, our Director of Crisis Services, and get right into this conversation. So stick around. We'll be right back.
My dad, he's a double amputee, and he's one of my favorite people in the world. To me, a hero is someone who fights for our country and freedom. My dad is a hero. Homes for Our Troops built this house, and my dad can get through the wide doorways. He can reach anything.
Homes for Our Troops builds and donates specially adapted custom homes nationwide for severely injured post-9/11 veterans and enables them to rebuild their lives. Join our mission at hfotusa.org.
The Mo is calling. For years, people around the world have been united by the power of the mustache. This Movember, unite to take on mental health, suicide, prostate and testicular cancers. Come together, grow together, raise funds, save lives. Change the face of men's health. Sign up at Movember.com.
There's danger out there. It lurks on highways and quiet neighborhood streets. It's more likely to kill you than a shark, and more terrifying than the biggest snake. Distracted driving claims lives every day. Every notification, swipe, social post, video, or selfie while driving risks your life. So while you might think public speaking or the zombie apocalypse is scary, what's really terrifying and even deadly is distracted driving. Eyes forward. Don't drive distracted. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers. So we build specially adapted homes at Homes for Our Troops. And thanks to our donors and supporters, this life-changing gift of freedom is provided mortgage-free to these veterans. But we need you to join us, too, in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
All right, everybody, we are back, and I am very happy to introduce you to Amber Smith. Amber Smith is our Director of Crisis Services at the Nord Center, and I will give Amber about 30 or 60 seconds to tell us a little bit about herself, her role there, how long she's been at Nord Center, and then we will jump right into this conversation.
Okay. Thank you, Don. So I'm oversee all of the lovely crisis services that Don kind of spoke about when he introduced the Nord Center. So I oversee our 24-hour hotline and 988s, our mobile crisis team, our peer-led warm line. I also oversee our behavioral health urgent care that's located in Sheffield. We just had our 1-year anniversary. And then I'll be overseeing our crisis receiving center that should be opening in about 2 years. I've been at the Nord Center for going on 5 years. Next month, actually. So started in crisis services as a manager, worked my way up, and now I'm the director. Been director for about going on 2 years now.
I'll tell you what, we are really lucky to have Amber. Amber brings with her a lot of experience, not only at the Nord Center, but at her previous place of employment. And I do want to come back to the behavioral health urgent care. I know that, I think, was our first podcast that we had discussion. I think you were unable to make it at that time. But I do want to come back to that because providing access to care when and where people need it is key, especially when you talk about building up the courage to seek care for illnesses like mental illness or substance use disorder. So we're going to get right into it. So Amber, we're going to start off, and I'm going to share something with our audience. You know, a survey conducted by the National Alliance of Mental Illness, or NAMI, found that 64% of individuals living with a mental illness reported that their conditions worsen around the holidays. That's more than half. Does this align with what you and your team have observed with our Nord Center clients or the community? And why do you think that is?
It really does. Our calls to the hotline and the assessments that we do with people in the community when we go out and we talk to them in person, a lot of people need support around the holiday. And I really feel that it's people that have a mental health or a substance use issue, and it's also people that are not diagnosed and might be struggling. Those kind of things get worse during the holiday season. And I think that's because when we think about the holidays, when we think about Christmas time in particular, if you celebrate that, you think of movies and TV shows where it's really kind of a magical time where everything's kind of glowing and has that glitter to it, and everyone's getting along with each other, and it's happiness and it's good memories. And that's not everyone's experience. So I think if you've lost that because of you lost a loved one or you haven't had that experience, it's still, you're grieving for what you never had. So when you compare it to everything that's going on around you and people that are having those good memories and experiences, it kind of makes you feel a little worse. So when you don't have that, or you're kind of lost someone, or you're struggling a little more, it kind of compounds and makes everything a little worse.
So what I'm hearing is that, you know, you may not necessarily know what somebody is going through, and my vision or version of stress during the holidays can be completely different from somebody else that is going through that. And as somebody who has not experienced a behavioral health or substance use disorder illness or emergency, how does that differ for members of our general public versus those of our mental health consumers? And do the holidays, can the holidays have a different or more significant impact on them?
It can. If someone's already diagnosed with mental health or been struggling for a while, those expectations of the holiday time can really make those symptoms worse. So it can increase depression, it can increase isolation and not wanting to kind of go out and be around those things that might be triggering or being around people that seem like they're not having any issues. But I also think it's good to point out that people who don't have a mental health diagnosis or a diagnosed substance use disorder can also struggle during the holidays, because even if it could be the first time that you've had a holiday since you lost a loved one, and that can be a struggle as well. So people with mental illness, it can definitely be worse, but I think we should acknowledge that everyone kind of can struggle a little bit during the holidays.
So let's talk about family gatherings, which I can either bring positive stress or pretty negative stress. So we know that not all family gatherings go smoothly, and there can be some anticipation. So what are some of your thoughts related how people can either prepare for or cope when they're entering into situations at family gatherings that, may cause some nervousness, anxiety, maybe even a little anger or fear?
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you mentioned positive stress. So that the holidays can be stressful, but positive stress could be you're preparing for a holiday meal, you're expecting a lot of people to come over, you want to do a good job, and then at the end of the day, if everything goes according to plan, you have an accomplishment. So all of that stress and anxiety, it led up to something fruitful and something positive. But it's still stress, right? So we still have to figure out how to deal with that. So I think planning is key. So knowing what you're going to be dealing with, who you're going to be talking to, and who you're going to be around. So kind of having like self-care, but also self-awareness of how you're going to be able to deal with, or how the questions that people might ask you. So I'm married. So at the holidays, it's always, when are you going to have children? Or are you going to have another grand dog? So those questions can be really stressful if it's something that you don't want to talk about. So knowing how to kind of handle those challenges, having a game plan. Even I'm a very introverted person, so going into the holidays, going in with family, I kind of have like, okay, I'm going to go for an hour. If I'm not having a good time after an hour, I'm giving myself permission to leave. And so it's not feeling like it's a failure. It's I came out, I accomplished what I set out to do, and now I can leave.
Wow, I'll tell you. And for the person that's not an introvert, making sure that when you're interacting with somebody that may not be as social as you are or extroverted as you are, it's important to pick up on those cues and recognize that maybe you might be creating a space that might make somebody uncomfortable. Well, I'll tell you what, I know we can probably devote a lot more time to the family aspect of it, but when we come back, we're going to talk about finances and how people may be able to deal with holiday stress that usually spend those holidays alone, and more information. So stick around and we'll be right back.
Thinking of buying a home? The Ohio Housing Finance Agency can help. We have programs designed to help make home ownership part of your future. The Ohio Housing Finance Agency's Ohio Heroes, Grants for Grads, and Your Choice Down Payment Assistance programs are all designed to help make purchasing a home affordable. To learn more, visit myohiohome.org. Sponsored by the Ohio Housing Finance Agency, aired by the Ohio Association of Broadcasters and this station.
America is kept safe because the Army National Guard responds, protects, and supports our nation when it needs them most. From fighting wildfires with air support, helping civilians in flooded neighborhoods, to delivering food and supplies to those who have lost everything, the Army National Guard always responds when disaster strikes. The Army National Guard also trains to be ever vigilant against threats, foreign and domestic. They protect our skies with missile defense weaponry. They secure our information, communications, and infrastructure with cybersecurity. And they protect us against chemical, biological, and radiological hazards with the civilian support team. The Army National Guard also stands ready to deploy and provide support for conflicts or humanitarian missions abroad. Join the Army National Guard and be there to respond, protect, and support your community and your country. Visit NationalGuard.com to learn more about part-time service. Sponsored by the Ohio Army National Guard. Aired by the Ohio Association of Broadcasters and this station.
My dad, he's a double amputee, and he's one of my favorite people in the world. To me, a hero is someone who fights for a country and freedom. My dad is a hero. Homes for Our Troops built this house, and my dad can get through the wide doorways. He can reach anything.
Homes for Our Troops builds and donates specially adapted custom homes nationwide for severely injured post-9/11 veterans and enables them to rebuild their lives. Join our mission at hfotusa.org.
All right, we're back, everybody, with Amber Smith, our Director of Crisis Services at the Nord Center, and we are talking about holiday stress for those of you that may experience either positive stress or negative stress during the holidays. And we're going to jump back into the conversation, and I want to talk a little bit about, for those of our listeners or viewers that may be watching this podcast, the feeling of loneliness around the holidays. Whether it's because you've lost a loved one, and I know in the previous segment you talked about it may be stressful for people that have lost a loved one around the holidays, or maybe you do live alone and, you see the movies and it's about family gatherings and getting together. How about loneliness, and is that a particular issue around the holidays, which I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
But what people can do to effectively cope with that?
Yeah, so I would say one of the greatest topics that people call about when they start calling around the holiday is loneliness and feeling unsupported and just needing someone to talk to and listen to them. And I think, winter as a whole, when it starts to get colder and more dreary, really makes people feel lonely. Because if one of your coping skills was walking outside, the sun's setting earlier, so then you're not able to have that amount of time that you might have had after work or after classes or something to kind of go outside and be in the sunlight. So there are, a multitude of ways that you can kind of combat that and have a coping skill that kind of works around that, but you have to find what works for you. So honestly, and I would say don't disregard seasonal affective disorder. So an actual diagnosis that someone can diagnose you with if you really do feel that loneliness and that depression during the winter time. Some people can take vitamin D because being in the north where you don't have as much sun, our actual vitamin levels and our minerals in our body can be affected. So it's not just our brain being lonely or grieving, it's our actual bodies might need some extra care during the winter as well.
So for people that may be experiencing loneliness, some may think, well, in order to combat loneliness, I need to surround myself with people. Mm-hmm. Is that necessarily a strategy that will work for everybody?
No, I think reaching out, if you are an extroverted person, being around people might recharge you. It might make things feel better. But sometimes just talking to one person, like calling into our warm line or to our crisis line, just having that connection for a little bit might help that person feel not as lonely. But we can also surround ourselves. If we are grieving a loved one, if that person, we had a particular tradition with them, we can continue on that tradition or we can alter it. So it's something that we can do by ourselves or with loved ones that are still around. And listening to music or watching movies. I know around the holidays, movies are a big part of my life. So watching movies that I watched as a child kind of make me remember my grandparents and my parents and feeling that comfort. So if the person you associate that movie or music to is gone, you can still surround yourself with that feeling of love.
Well, I appreciate that. That's awesome. Speaking of Christmas movies, I watched Frozen last night and thought of my daughter. But she wouldn't sing it, though. But the next thing I want to talk about, which I think is a big topic, and it'll probably carry us to our next break, and we might have to come back to it afterwards, is finances. Mm-hmm. I don't think it matters whether you are rich, poor, affluent, or not. I think the impact of what can be seen as a financial stressor in the holidays can impact a lot of people. And with the impact of financial stress, can we talk a little bit how it plays in the role of making holidays hard for people, and how do you advise people to approach this issue? Because I think we think there's this, dire need to, either buy presents for everybody or buy the best present or,
like the most expensive, the more like the quantity, like how much we give equates our love or our like of the person that we're giving it to.
Exactly.
And I think there's really been a shift recently. I was actually listening to the radio the other morning, and they were talking about a survey that recently went out, and don't quote me, but about 60% of people are actually looking more towards, is it okay to give people thrifted or secondhand or handmade gifts instead of buying the new shiny thing that might be, in the garbage or in the closet the next year. And 77% of people actually would rather have an experience than an actual material thing. So I think, we should really budget ourselves, but I think also when we're going to buy that present, giving a little more thought to what can this person do with it? Can it be a memory? Can it be pictures? Can it be something internal that they can keep with them instead of something maternal or material that goes on the wall or again, is something that gets played with for a little bit and then thrown away. And I think you really have to consider who you're buying for and, what they would be willing to accept and like what you want to do with them. I think kids are a little harder because they do want the toys and you do want to make that kind of magical for them. But really people are looking for those experiences of like traveling somewhere, going to concerts, going to museums, something handmade. It doesn't have to be perfect. And again, I think we get into this idea of it has to be perfect. But I think receiving something handmade or something that I really wanted, even if I don't need to know if it was bought at, Goodwill, like you just have to give it to me and then it's something I wanted. So then that's a great present.
Yeah, that's the second time or third time I've heard about getting an experience for the holiday. And I think it's important to note, when we talk about tickets to concerts or, tickets to the spa or some type of activity, you don't necessarily have to pay for the whole experience. Giving somebody a portion of that to go towards that experience is something that can be really a thoughtful gift and quite a relief to the recipients that are getting it.
And it doesn't even have to be something that costs a lot of money. I know our local libraries have a lot of different classes and a lot of different things. So if someone is very interested in tea, I know that the Elyria Library has you can go and experience different teas and learning about them. And so there's experiences that you can have too that don't cost a lot of money.
Well, that's really good information. I'll tell you what, we got a little bit more to cover, but we're going to take a quick break. Stick around and we'll be right back.
The Mo is calling. For years, people around the world have been united by the power of the mustache. This Movember, unite to take on mental health, suicide, prostate and testicular cancers. Come together, grow together, raise funds, save lives. Change the face of men's health. Sign up at Movember.com.
There's danger out there. It lurks on highways and quiet neighborhood streets. It's more likely to kill you than a shark and more terrifying than the biggest snake. Distracted driving claims lives every day. Every notification, swipe, social post, video, or selfie while driving risks your life. So while you might think public speaking or the zombie apocalypse is scary, what's really terrifying and even deadly is distracted driving. Eyes forward. Don't drive distracted. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers. So we build specially adapted homes at Homes for Our Troops. And thanks to our donors and supporters, this life-changing gift of freedom is provided mortgage-free to these veterans. But we need you to join us, too, in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Thinking of buying a home? The Ohio Housing Finance Agency can help. We have programs designed to help make home ownership part of your future. The Ohio Housing Finance Agency's Ohio Heroes, Grants for Grads, and Your Choice Down Payment Assistance programs are all designed to help make purchasing a home affordable. To learn more, visit myohiohome.org. Sponsored by the Ohio Housing Finance Agency, aired by the Ohio Association of Broadcasters and this station.
We are back for our last segment, and once again, I'd like to thank Amber Smith for joining us today, our Director of Crisis Services at the Nord Center. So, Amber, we're going to touch upon two more things, and we've talked about loneliness, we've talked about the financial stressors, but, one of the things around the holidays that, can be at gatherings is alcohol, hopefully, at some places, even illicit substances. So let's talk about how people can effectively deal with a scenario where maybe they struggle with substance use disorder. You're an alcoholic, or you have an addiction, and you go to a function where those substances may exist. Can you talk to us a little bit about how people can not only effectively manage that type of situation, but recognize when they might need to take themselves out of that situation or effectively cope with it?
Yeah, so I know a lot of people struggle with this, and the holidays, I think, make it worse because we do kind of associate, at least some of us, drinking with gatherings. So there's kind of two sides that you can look at this from the host side. So the person who's inviting people over, kind of doing that planning, what things can you do to help someone who might be coming as a guest that might be struggling with substance issues? And so I think it's really about, in that planning, allowing yourself to say, it's okay, this person can have fun without the substance or without drinking. So having options for the person to choose from alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks, or allowing the person to bring their own. I think as a hostess, you really want to make sure everything's available and there, and that you've planned for everything and everything's perfect. But I think it's okay to say, we're going to have these options here available. If you want something else, feel free to bring it. So then that leaves the person who might be struggling with a substance issue or alcohol issue to know that, okay, there will be alcohol there, but I don't have to drink it. I don't have to use it. I can bring my own pop or soda, as you call it.
Yes.
And still have fun around people and knowing that I'm going to be, safe.
So it's similar to what you talked about earlier, is kind of have a game plan of when you're going to go there. Just do a quick check of, all right, what's going to be there? What type of space am I going into? And rather than calling audibles when you get in there, actually having a game plan of, okay, what happens if I walk by a martini bar, or if somebody's, one of my friends is, smoking a joint and asks me to come talk to them. Yeah, that's really good information. One of the other things can also be that can cause a little bit of stress, and we got a couple more minutes here, is, all right, I recognize that I may not be in a good place in terms of behavioral health stress or substance use disorder crises. Can you talk to us about some of the services that the Nord Center provides that can be an avenue for people to get in touch with in order to deal with a situation that, they recognize may be something that they need assistance with?
Yeah, so our 1-800 crisis hotline /988 is open 24/7. So people can simply dial those 3 digits, 988, and they'll get connected to someone who is experienced, who can ask questions to kind of tease out what's going on, and how we can best help you. So sometimes help is, again, just providing support. Like when someone's lonely, it's helping you kind of work through your triggers, or practicing. So you know that you're going to be around someone, kind of practicing the responses that you might have to anticipated questions. You can always work with someone on 90-day on our hotline to kind of role play and do that. And we can always give you further resources if you're looking for maybe an aftercare program or outpatient services, or you need a little more support and you're not quite sure where to get that. We can also give you like AA and NA resources. So we kind of are a one-stop shop. So we're always going to be there, listen to you, kind of try to work through it if that's something that you want to do, and then provide you with the resources that you can kind of continue on that work.
All right, we got less than a minute. How does behavioral health urgent care play into that continuum of care for being able to be a resource for people in these situations?
Yeah, so our behavioral health urgent care, we're open currently Monday through Friday. We accept walk-ins 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And people can walk in as long as you're right now adults, but we will be serving youth 12 and older starting in January 8th. We're going to begin that. So people that know that they need help with getting linked to services, either mental health or SUD, and they can, come in, they can talk, say, I think I need medication, or I think I need counseling, but I'm not really sure. They can kind of come in. They'll meet with a social worker, a nurse practitioner, and a nurse to kind of help them figure out a good treatment plan and resources. And you don't have to be a Nord Center client in order to walk in and use the behavioral health urgent care services. So anyone that needs those services can kind of walk in. We'll probably talk to you about the Nord Center services, but we'll also we're really big on client choice, so we'll give you all of the options in the county.
And I think the other thing to recognize, too, is that whether it's behavioral health urgent care, accessing our services, regardless of anybody's ability to pay,
right,
all we want you to do is we want you to get to care that you need when you need it. So if you're worried about how you're going to pay for services, don't. You come in, you see us, and we will assist you with all of that in due time. So, Amber, I want to thank you again for joining us. This half hour always seems to fly by. At the Nord Center, we are focused on engaging our community and promoting mental health wellness through treatment, prevention, and advocacy. There are a number of career opportunities available at our center, and if you're interested in a career in behavioral health, you can go to nordcenter.org/careers, and we have some flexible options. So once again, thank you all for taking the time to listen to us on the radio, to view the podcast, and wishing you the happiest, safest, and healthiest of holidays. Take care, everybody.
The proceeding was a paid informational program. The views and opinions expressed were not necessarily those of the staff, management, or advertisers of WOBL Radio.
Home of the